With all of the focus centered around the release of the Jeffrey Epstein files, there has been a renewed interest in how the late sex offender, who was once a teacher at New York City's prestigious Dalton School, accumulated his massive wealth and ended up in circles with high-profile figures and orchestrated a vast sex trafficking operation. Now, 2 investigations by the New York Times unpack Epstein's rise to prominence, including one on how the college dropout got so rich. In it, Epstein is described as, quote, a relentless scammer. He abused expense accounts, engineered inside deals, and demonstrated a remarkable knack for separating seemingly sophisticated investors and businessmen from their money. He started small, testing his tactics and seeing what he could get away with. The other reporting reveals the very close relationship between Epstein and President Trump, especially their time chasing women together, writing, quote, with other men, Mr. Epstein might discuss tax shelters, international affairs, or neuroscience. With Mr. Trump, he talked about sex. Joining us now, Steve Eder, who was one of the bylines for the Epstein finances piece. He's been investigating Epstein since 2019. And Nick Confessore, who is one of the bylines for the Trump-Epstein friendship story, is also. It's insane to me that this man that no one really knows what he did, to have multiple jets, to have this lifestyle, to have the millions, and the excuse that he was helping billionaires with their tax shelters just doesn't really add up at the end of the day. And it couldn't have just all been swindling. So what's your best simple explanation for the cash flow, if you have one? I'm sorry, but
it's a long discussion. But I think
it wasn't like a Bernie Madoff Ponzi scheme that he was running. That's how he accumulated.
No, I mean, he had a couple major clients, over the course of the years, and we wrote a piece on Leon Black, as well, another later client, and then Leslie Wexner. Those are kind of the 2 main clients over the years that we know about, and it created opportunities for Jeffrey Epstein, I think, to attain some immense wealth in the properties and things that we see. There's probably more to it, and there's more to discuss, but that's kind of the quick answer, at least of the last few decades.
And feel free to say no to this, but did you ever come across any blackmailing, any evidence that he blackmailed these clients to accumulate this wealth? Or any suggestions of such?
I mean, look, certainly the rumors, the discussion,
right.
There's so much skepticism about what Epstein did. I don't know that we found a clear case of a blackmail.
But the 2 of you have traveled extensively to do this reporting. Mm-hmm. Are there people out there who know and have connections to Epstein and this network who are still afraid to talk?
There are definitely people that I've spoken to who are too afraid to talk publicly or on the record, even at all, to have their material in the newspaper. They're terrified. I've really never encountered this amount of fear to even return a phone call, to even respond to an email. People go dark immediately.
Wait, what are they afraid of, just to clarify?
Yeah.
Like they're just afraid of the stigma of being associated with Epstein, or something more?
They're afraid of being sued. They're afraid that the president's supporters might target them. A group of survivors came out a few weeks ago, I believe, and said that they've been subject to death threats. All for asking the government to release files and show transparency.
And you can see a difference. I've been reporting on this story off and on for 6 years, and even from 2019 to now, just the toxicity, around this and having any connection to it, and it can be very hard to get people to return a call.
Really quickly, just with both of you, what's the most surprising thing you learned in this latest round of deep, immersive reporting that you did?
I wouldn't call it a surprise, really, but the police report, the FBI report, I think that Maria Farmer submitted, that she's been talking about for years, and she got gaslit, and the DOJ wouldn't say it existed, and she said, no, I went to the cops, I went to the authorities in the 90s and reported this guy for child porn. We now know it exists. She was right. She was vindicated.
Yeah, and I think that's actually, probably what I would have said as well. Not a whole lot surprising. I mean, I think in terms of what we've seen in the last 36 hours since we started looking at it, however long it's been.
Let me ask you finally, as 2 journalists, what questions do you have that you want to pursue going forward?
I mean, I'm certainly still interested in the money and trying to learn. I mean, I feel like
You think financial institutions have answered for how this money moved around the financial system clearly and accurately so far?
I think journalists have tried, and others have tried to get at that. Yeah. I still think there's a fuller accounting, to be done. And we I think certainly through our magazine piece at the New York Times, we got, several steps there and other stories that we've done. But I still feel like there's more to be learned, and we're looking forward to getting at that.
In this first round of releases, there are a lot of redacted faces in those pictures. There's a lot of men's faces that have been redacted. I'm curious to find out what more we can learn about other men that these women were trafficked to by Epstein.
Are there people out there who know and have connections to Epstein and this network who are still afraid to talk?
There are definitely people that I've spoken to who are too afraid to talk publicly or on the record, even at all, to have their material in the newspaper. They're terrified. I've really never encountered this amount of fear to even return a phone call, to even respond to an email. People go dark immediately.
Wait, what are they afraid of, just to clarify?
Yeah.
Like they're just afraid of the stigma of being associated with Epstein or something more?
They're afraid of being sued. They're afraid that the president's supporters might target them. A group of survivors came out a few weeks ago, I believe, and said that they've been subject to death threats, all for asking the government to release files and show transparency.
Joining me now is Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche. Mr. Blanche, welcome to Meet the Press.
Good morning.
The White House has said that President Trump is included in the files. Can you guarantee that every mention and every photo of President Trump in the Epstein files will be released?
Yes. We've said it before, and President Trump has said it repeatedly since before he was elected. And since he was elected, all summer long, he said the same thing. I have nothing to hide. And so, of course, that's the case. To the extent that he is, quote, in the Epstein files, it's not because he had anything to do with the horrific crimes. Full stop. But yes, if President Trump is mentioned, if there's photographs that we have of President Trump or anybody else, they, of course, will be released with the exception of any victims or survivors that we've identified, which we will either not release that photograph if it's just a photograph of a survivor, or if we do release the photograph because there's other individuals in the picture, the survivor's face or her entire body in some cases will be redacted.
And we're talking about President Trump in relation to this. For months, he urged Republicans to stop pushing for the files to be released. He dismissed the Epstein files as a hoax. I want to play a little bit of what he has said about the Epstein files before he signed the law. Take a look.
It's all been a big hoax. It's perpetrated by the Democrats and some stupid Republicans. I don't understand it, why they would be so interested. He's dead for a long time. It's sordid, but it's boring. This is a Democrat hoax that never ends.
Are the Epstein files a hoax, Mr. Blanche?
What President Trump is saying is not that the Epstein files are a hoax. It's this game that Democrats have been playing for the past 9 months around the Epstein files that is a complete and total hoax.
Well, and some Republicans pushing for the release, too. Some of the Republicans were pushing for the release, too, just to be clear.
Well, that's different. That's different. To be clear, releasing the files is not what President Trump has ever had an issue with. When he calls this a hoax, he's talking about the fact that there's this narrative out there that the Department of Justice is somehow hiding or protecting information about him, which is completely false, as evidenced by the fact that the Epstein files existed for years and years and years, and you did not hear a peep out of a single Democrat for the past 4 years. And yet we're supposed to believe that, lo and behold, all of a sudden, out of the blue, Senator Schumer suddenly cares about the Epstein files. That's the hoax. And that's the hoax that has existed for months and months and months. This isn't about whether we would release or not release the Epstein files. As a general matter, we do not release the files of criminal investigations and prosecutions. Yeah. There's laws around that. There's laws that protect victims, that protect the innocent. So we're doing something here that is more transparent than we've done in any criminal investigation in the history of this country. Don't forget that.
In November, President Trump directed the Attorney General to investigate, speaking of investigations, high-profile Democrats with ties to Jeffrey Epstein. Is the Justice Department investigating only Democrats or everyone with a connection to Jeffrey Epstein?
So Jay Clayton, the U.S. Attorney in the Southern District of New York, which is the office that had the most recent Epstein case, is investigating pursuant to the communication from President Trump. And by the way, this department will always investigate anybody and anything that we learn about sex trafficking or any victim of horrible sex crimes that takes place. As proof of that, the Attorney General, the Director of the FBI, we have charged and we are prosecuting more child predators just in the first 10 months of this administration than the entire 4 years of the Biden administration. So this idea that there's that we're protecting or doing something wrong when it comes to protecting victims is not true.
Well, in the directive, President Trump singled out former President Bill Clinton. Of course, a number of photos of President Clinton were released Friday, a Clinton spokesperson saying the White House hasn't been hiding these files for months, only to dump them late on a Friday to protect Bill Clinton. This is about shielding themselves from what comes next or from what they'll try and hide forever. Let me ask you bluntly, is President Clinton under investigation?
I will never talk about ongoing criminal investigations, so I'm not going to answer that question. But let me address the second part of the quote that you just gave us. Think about how patently absurd that position is. The idea that we have hundreds and hundreds of DOJ lawyers, these are not politicals, it's not me, it's not Attorney General Bondi, looking at all of these files and determining whether they are responsive to the act. And we over-collected, by the way. We went out to all of our components and we said, give us any document that you think in any way, shape, or form is connected to the Epstein case. And that's what we're going through. So the idea that we are hiding something, or there's something that we have hidden under a rock around President Trump or other Republicans, is not only false, but it's obviously false for anybody that's intelligent enough to think about what we're doing.
Let me just put a fine point on this. Will the Justice Department bring any new charges against anyone based on the contents of these files?
We have continued to investigate anybody associated with Jeffrey Epstein for years and years. We discussed this in our July memo, and we continue. So the answer is, I don't know whether there'll be additional prosecutions. Based on the information that we had in July, based upon the information that I'm aware of now, we are not prepared to bring charges against anybody, but we are learning new information all the time. We learned the names of additional victims as recently as Wednesday of this week. Okay, so there's new names that we didn't have before that we ran across our database to understand whether they had ever met with law enforcement or ever talked to the FBI. And so we're always investigating. And so it would be premature and not fair for me to unilaterally say yes or no to what future prosecutions there may be.
Okay, Mr. Blanche, you talk about the reaction from Capitol Hill. Let me allow you to respond to some of it. Congressman Thomas Massie and Ro Khanna, the authors of the Epstein bill, say the partial release of files failed to comply with the law. They say they are considering looking into the possibility of impeachment proceedings, contempt, even criminal referrals for obstruction of justice for DOJ officials. Do you take these threats seriously?
Not even a little bit. Bring it on. We are doing everything we're supposed to be doing to comply with this statute. And Congressman Massie and these other congressmen that are coming out speaking negatively about Director Patel and the Attorney General have no idea what they're talking about. They know the work that we're going through. They know what we're doing to protect victims. I mean, just think about what we're doing. You're talking about 1 million or so pages of documents. Virtually all of them contain victim information. So listen, the idea that Attorney General Bondi would ever let a single piece of paper go out of this department that contains victim information is something they know we won't do. And the fact that they're threatening to impeach her for protecting victims is a reflection of where their head's at. It's not a reflection of this department. We are complying with the statute. We will continue to comply with the statute. And if by complying with the statute, we don't produce everything on Friday, we produce things next week and the week after, that's still compliance with the statute. There is well-settled law, as they should know, that in a case like this, where we're required to produce within a certain amount of time, but also comply with other laws like redacting information, that very much trumps, redacting information very much trumps some deadline in the statute.
All right, couple more and we're almost out of time. I do want to ask you about Ghislaine Maxwell, who was, of course, convicted in 2021 for her role in helping Jeffrey Epstein traffic his victims. In July, you interviewed her in Florida, where she was serving a 20-year sentence in federal prison. Just a week later, Maxwell was moved to a more permissive prison camp in Texas. Why was she moved just days after you interviewed her, Mr. Blanche?
So that's a Bureau of Prison Security issue that I will not talk about.
Did you have anything to do with it? Did you have anything to do with it?
Let me finish. First of all, I am responsible for the Bureau of Prisons. So every decision that they make lands on my desk to the extent it needs to. But just let me talk about the security issue. At the time that I met Ms. Maxwell, there was a tremendous amount of scrutiny and publicity towards her, and the institution she was in, she was suffering numerous threats against her life. So the BOP is not only responsible for putting people in jail and making sure they stay in jail, but also for their safety. And so she was moved. She is in federal prison. She was in federal prison before. She's in federal prison now. She's doing 20 years because she was convicted. And the fact that she was moved, she might be moved to another institution tomorrow if security requires it. And that's true of any federal inmate across this country.
But as you know, survivors were outraged by all of this, especially the fact that she was moved. Why talk to Ghislaine Maxwell and not the survivors, Mr. Blanche?
What you just said is completely false. We will talk to any survivor at any time, which is something that we have
you
said
talked to them
from day one.
But have you talked to them?
Of course. First of all, they have to want to speak with us. The Attorney General and I spoke with a victims' rights group as recently as Thursday. Okay. And if folks want to talk to us next week or the week after or in the coming months, they know how to get a hold of us. And we will always talk to survivors and victims' families. But just backing up to your question about Ms. Maxwell, nobody ever talked to her. Nobody ever asked her questions about what she knew. So when she said that she had something she wanted to say, notwithstanding the fact she had been convicted, of course we went and talked to her. Imagine if we didn't talk to her. Imagine if she had said, I have a story to tell and I would like to talk to the government. And I said, no. The same outrage would be directed at this department for not speaking with her. So we're trying to do our job here, and we are doing our job here. But any victim that wants to talk to the FBI, that wants to talk to the Department of Justice, they can call us anytime.
Let me ask you, President Trump in September urged Attorney General Pam Bondi to prosecute former FBI Director James Comey, New York Attorney General Letitia James, and Senator Adam Schiff, saying in a social media post that was supposed to be private, quote, "They're all guilty as hell." Comey was indicted 5 days later. Does President Trump speak to you or to the Attorney General directly about individual criminal cases and investigations, Mr. Blanche?
I will never talk about the communications I have with President Trump, and I don't expect Attorney General Bondi will either. However, when it comes to the prosecutions that this department is undertaking, we are following the facts and the law, period. And so with the case of James Comey, and he was indicted, the case was then dismissed by a judge because of a appointments issue. We were already investigating, which was very much available to the public at the time that President Trump sent that note. And so the fact that we continue to investigate and ultimately he was indicted is not a reflection of what President Trump put in that truth. It's a reflection of the work that we're doing and have been doing long before September.
Just very quickly, career prosecutor Eric Siebert was fired after refusing to prosecute these cases against James Comey. He was replaced by Lindsay Halligan, of course, the president's former personal lawyer who doesn't have prosecutorial experience, who was found to be unconstitutionally appointed. And the cases were thrown out, as you say. To be clear, is the Justice Department taking directions about who to prosecute from President Trump?
No, of course we're not. And also, Mr. Siebert wasn't fired because he refused to bring cases. He resigned, okay? And so, and this narrative out there that somehow it was because of James Comey, it was because of Letitia James. No, that's not true at all. And Ms. Halligan went in there and did a great job. She's still doing a great job as our U.S. attorney in the EDVA. And you had a local judge rule that she was not validly appointed. We filed an appeal in that case. I expect that eventually, when the appellate courts looks at this issue, we'll win that issue.
All right, Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche, thank you so much for being here today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.